This started when I happened to see this video from Jenny Hansen Lane, and she talks about how she wants to, help you not make the same mistake she did. And she's an expert on publishing books on Kindle Direct Publishing. She's made $37,000 doing that rather. And she says, learn from my mistakes. And so this video is a really good example of just a person talking, making lots of points, but it's just a person talking. And so I had this idea of, could I automate this and could I get it to what I have right here, where it actually, it takes the video and it puts it in, a little box, and then it gives you these points, automatically. And so if I start at the beginning,
making $37,000 on Amazon Kindle Direct Publishing.
You can see that she's starting to talk, and we're seeing the first, bullet point, which is a section, and then it goes to, more points appear as she's talking. And the link to this video is in here, so if you want to actually watch this video, you'll get a better sense of it than just seeing these little thumbnails as I advance the timeline here. But you get the idea that this would be a lot of work to go and do manually in Final Cut Pro. And in fact, if you look at my Final Cut Pro here, you'll see here it is. Like, I am not about to go in and make every single one of these and line them all up like that. And so one of your first questions might be, well, how do you time it right? Like, how do you make sure that, right when she's saying increase cart value, that's when this thing goes? And the answer is I got lucky and it's good enough. Like, it's so much better than not having them, in my opinion, that if they're slightly off, and you wouldn't believe the serendipity of how it lines up. Like, go watch the video, you'll see things appear right on time. Just because it naturally worked out that way, because it makes it exactly the length of the video, which in this case is 7 minutes and 11 seconds. And when you stretch it out that way, they all just kind of lined up. What can I say? All right, so now how did we do all this, and what does it look like, and how do we begin? Okay, so it all began with this prompt. Add a new util menu for creative text that takes as input a file like jennyhansenlane.json. I'll explain in a second how we made that. And make the text slowly show over time. Be creative and use features of Final Cut Pro to make the text be presented to the user in a way that really helps convey the messages. Leave space in the design for a picture-in-picture video to later be layered on top of the background and text this feature creates. You need to make a good background in addition to the text layout. As you move from point to point, they should reveal each new point, but leave the old point still visible. Then, when moving to a whole new section, swipe away all the text and start with an empty background. Now, this is a big change for any feature I've built in Cutlass before, because every single feature I've built in Cutlass before, I've always made a little example in Final Cut Pro, exported it exports as XML, and I've let Cloud read that XML, and that's been a very effective way. In fact, it's been the only way to teach it the format, because it's a very complicated format. But Cutlass is getting more and more mature, and so I actually did a big refactor right before this, where I really had it write a bunch of tests, and I said, all right, now really, fix up your cloud.md file, and let's, I had it just make up tests of fancy things it could do in Final Cut Pro, just because I knew they would break, and so it could fix them. Because I was getting so many of these errors, repetitive errors, all at the same time, of just like, your frame boundary isn't right, or the DDT validation isn't working, or there was like 7 different ways it would fail all the time, over and over again. And I kept fixing them one by one, and I would add tests, but it was brittle. And so I went in and did that big refactor, and Claude did a great job. Claude even came up all on its own of having this this check that it goes through every time it renders XML. Now it actually runs it through this little fail-safe test to make sure that it's going to work. So anyway, now that it has all that knowledge and this ability, and it's better at understanding Final Cut Pro XML than it's ever been, I thought, well, why don't I give it a shot to just make this feature without ever looking at any XML, because it should understand it by now, right? And so I wrote out the prompt exactly like this, and it did not work the first time, but I helped develop the feature, and eventually I did have to go in and just make a very small example in Final Cut Pro and export that, just so it could see how to add a background. It was getting stuck on adding text onto nothing. It needed to know how to make a background. And okay, so then, yeah, back to this question of Jenny Hansen Lane.json. Well, let's view this file first of all. So it's just JSON, and it says protect your work. You know, that's the first section, and it's got these points: copyright setback, register early, and there's sales clues. You know, it goes on and on. Now, I did not type this out. I did not make this myself. I got this from the VTT file. So if you look in your data directory with Cutlass, after you download a YouTube video, and in this case, this was the ID, it not only downloads the MP4 and turns it into a MOV file, but it also gets you the captions, the English captions. And so if you look at that file, the data, it's got a lot of, you know, formatting in there for VTT, because this is meant for captions, right? It's meant for, you know, the exact time code that these words appear. But it also works as a wonderful little transcript. And there's a feature in Cutlass where I can say in the utils, I can say parse VTT, and I give it that file, and it gets rid of all that fancy formatting and all the time codes and gives me, you know, just the text. So now that I have just the text here, I just took it all, you know, and I went to just any of your main AIs. I'm using ChatGPT in this one, and I'd say turn this into, I'd say summarize and make JSON with sections and the main points. So yeah, so it just, you know, oh, okay, look, it's done. Yeah, so yeah, this might not, oh yeah, there it is. Yeah, look, it's slightly different format this time, you know, but it's very close. And well, when I did it originally, I told it to make it shorter because these get really long, right? And in fact, that's one thing I did have to do after I was, you know, getting it all to work perfectly is, like in the one that it generated that I was using, some of these things were still a little too long. Like, and that meant that the video wouldn't line up. Like some of these things came all the way over, you know, over the image, and it didn't look good. And so I just had to, so it was no big, that was after it was code complete. And so it already compiled. All I had to do was run it again after changing this JSON. And then, you know, I got a brand new XML file, and that's what's been published now, right? And so anyway, that's how I got, you know, the JSON to be able to use here, and that's how this feature is working. And by the way, to run it, you know, it's just like Cutlass. You might have saw it in the utils. It's called creative text. And so it takes as an input file, you know, and look how fast it is too, because it's not doing, I mean, the complexity is all in understanding the format, but at the end of the day, all it's doing is it's making a very small XML file. Well, very small in quotes. It's small to a computer, but to us humans, it's a lot of XML, and if you look at it, you start to go crazy. But as far as, I mean, you're used to generating videos. I mean, that takes a long time sometimes. This is instant, basically, right? And we already have, you know, the file we need. And so, yeah, if I were to open that in Final Cut Pro, it's just a matter of double-clicking on this. And I always, you know, put it back in the same, you know, space, and I always say replace. And then I hit cancel here just because I didn't want to, you know, undo this one. But yeah, when you say replace, this entire thing would get replaced, and then you just double click on this, and you would see this. It wouldn't look exactly like this. Well, here I can show you. Let me close this, and let me go ahead and double click this time and actually say, well, here, why don't I do this? I will say export, backup. Okay, now I can move to trash. Move to trash. And now I can. And now nothing, this is the confusing part here. It's just showing you something I had open in Final Cut Pro before. I have to double click on this. There it is. And now when it generates it, it has a blue background. So the one I actually published, I just went in and added a black, you know, background instead. And then of course I added the picture-in-picture because, like, you know, this is just, you know, I even explained in the prompt. I said leave a space for the picture-in-picture, and that's what this space is, right? Okay, and so but back to the prompts and how I finally got it to work, because this is a video about Claude Code, right? if you come down here and I hit down arrow, it got confused at first. It thought it was in the wrong directory trying to compile it. Open dot. I must have typed that by mistake in there. Okay, so here was the first one that, it failed DDT validation, which is strange because there is a test for that and it should have done that. Sometimes the command line DDT validation says it's fine, but then when you open it in Final Cut Pro, you get a DDT validation error, and that's what this was. So this was the first one it had to fix. These are very common. And so a lot of this is, a failure in the sense of the big refactor I did was supposed to prevent all of this from ever happening. Like, it's supposed to understand Final Cut Pro XML so well that it would just not keep making these because it has tons of tests. A lot of this is mentioned in the Claude.md. There's tons of comments, but it still struggles. But it's getting better and better with each iteration, right? And so this was an interesting test. We'll see what the next test brings. Hopefully there'll be less and less over time, right? Okay, again, more of these. Oh, okay, so the very first thing I got was, it finally parsed it correctly, but there was no text on it whatsoever. It was just 51 seconds of a blank screen. And so I told it that. And it tried to fix it. We got a slightly different error because this is the background problem, because it was trying to figure out how to do a background and it didn't know, right? So I went ahead and made it a background. This is where, and the samples directory has lots of these things. It's not cheating. I mean, it's a necessary thing. But hopefully over time, in that samples directory will get bigger and bigger and bigger. Hopefully at some point, Cutlass won't need any more samples because it just knows the format so well. Okay. So it fixed the background, but it's just 51 seconds of blue. I can see the text, and this is a good first pass. Now I'll work on making it look beautiful and amazing. The fonts are too small, and it's too boring. Really think creatively and slide the text in. Have some style to how you want to land your points. Each section needs to be introduced, and point 1, bam, point 2, bam, make it wild and exciting. So that was a pretty, open-ended prompt just to make it, look better. And I know it can do it. I mean, I know AI, if you just, tell it what you want, it'll do it for you. And it was so obvious what it needed because when it first produced it, and you'll see in the later prompts that there's still some problems with how they line up. But the first pass, the fonts were way too small. They were just, it looked terrible. It looked like a kindergartner did it, right? Jenny Hansen, XML problems. Oh, I finally got it to a point where, it's looking pretty good. And I said, space it out to exactly 7 minutes and 11 seconds, which just so happens to be the time of my sample video. Eventually, I'll make this a parameter, or actually, I'll probably make it where you just pass in the YouTube ID, and it'll look in your data directory, and it'll find, the subtitles, and it'll also find the move file, and then it'll calculate the duration of the move file. So this won't be hard-coded. Good. Now work on readability. The section name slides in from the right, which is good, but lands in the center. Then points show up on the left, but they are very far to the left, almost off the screen. They overlap on top of the center section name. So this is another case of where I had to give it just a little bit of help because it was just not seeing it, right? And so I info.fcpxml is the default name you get when I export one. And so I didn't bother putting this one in samples. I just left it in the current directory, and I said, look, this is how you do it, right? And it needed to make the Y distance between each the exact same amount of pixels. And when the example I gave it, I'm not pixel perfect. When I dragged him to look close, but I wanted to make sure it didn't copy my mistakes of those pixels. So I'm like, well, put them exactly the way they are, even if my example are off. It's good about that. That's something I know AI can do. It got very close, but I'm like, okay, the main section needs to be in the upper left corner. Now it's too far to the left. It needs to be staggered and put the points under it. Now change the Y up a little bit. So I'm just, I'm adjusting here and there and just getting it exactly perfect. That's it. That's the end of this. So this error I got when I went to try to upload it to YouTube. I have a script to upload the videos to YouTube, and my token had expired. And so, yeah, that's it for understanding how to make, this Cutlass remake of the Jenny Hansen Lane video.